but I'm honored that you chose to be here. And I'm also honored that people like Dave Cobb and the 17 radio stations of Northwest Florida have chosen to put on over $100,000 of PSAs to encourage people in the Panhandle that were denied. Over 200,000 people were denied. And denial meant something much different than you and I think. It meant that they were looking for more information. Well, back 6 weeks ago, the information that they were looking for is different than the information tonight. So what we're doing tonight, and this is the whole concept of what we're here to do, is that this is the impacted area. It's not Tampa or Los Angeles or New York. It's a stretch between, really, for the tourism, between Baldwin County to Panama City. You have a chance, you have more than one chance to do it right. Many of you went in good faith back in April or June or July or January, filling out those applications, thinking that there was a person on the other end that cared about your claim. I don't know if that's true or not. I have my suspicions, and as you probably know, I've had several conversations with Mr. Feinberg. He tells me, he says, give me 60 days to fix this thing. We gave him 4 suggestions to fix it. Unfortunately, none of those suggestions have been accepted, but he still believes it's a better process today, and it'll be a better process at the end of this month than it was when he took over. I'm willing to trust him that he did that. How do we prove that? The only way to prove it is for you and your neighbor and your neighbor's neighbor and your business people that are part of this community that have been hurt is to file a new claim or to refile a claim. We will discover very quickly, hopefully within the next 30 days, if the process is any better or it's the same as it was. This is saying we want to teach you a process based on their rules, what they've established as being the criteria that will get you accepted. You'll know why you've been accepted, and you'll know why you've been rejected. That's our goal. Furthermore, we have some other folks here. And in addition to our Northwest Florida consultants who's going to do a PowerPoint, Kelly Johnson, we have the University of West Florida Small Business Development, Stacy Thorington. Stacy? We have Salt March, Cleveland and Gunn, Shelton Bruneau. Let me say this to you. You're going to be hearing in the next 60 days a public service announcement that's going to say that you have, not 60 days, next 30 days, that you have until April 20th to file your claim. Has anyone heard that announcement so far? We're going to go ahead and play that. I want you to hear it because it's really important you understand what's going on.
A federal court is overseeing litigation against companies involved in the oil spill and has approved the content of this message. A trial will be held in February 2012. To preserve your right to recover money damages from Transocean, you must take action by April 20th, 2011. If you had a personal injury, loss of earnings, property damage, business loss, or other economic loss from the oil spill, you can participate. You need to file a simple form to participate. There is no filing fee, and a lawyer is not required to file the short form. This is separate from the claims process in the Gulf Coast Claims Facility. To participate, you must file a simple form by April 20th, 2011. For forms and information, call 1-877-497-5926 or visit oilspillcourtcase.com. That's 1-877-497-5926.
That really comes from Judge Barbier in Louisiana, who will be the federal judge that oversees every case that goes before him, or any case, any place on the Gulf Coast will go through Judge Barbier. He's established an executive committee, and it's our honor tonight to have the person on that executive committee who is going to explain to you exactly what that message means and what you have to do to participate. So Brian Barr, if you'll come forward and explain that to us.
Thank you, Representative Broxton. I just wanted to take a few minutes and explain to everybody what that public service announcement was about. Many people don't know that Transocean, there are a lot of defendants in this case. BP is not the only person at fault here. And Transocean filed something called a limitation action. And what they've tried to do through that action is limit their damages to $27 million, which is the current value of the vessel plus its cargo. And attached to that complaint that they file, prospective people that have claims have a deadline upon which they have to file their claim against Transocean. The court, and that's called a monition date. The court has set that deadline at April 20th, 2011. What the steering committee that I'm a part of worked out with the court was a process by which people could file their claim against Transocean without a filing fee and without a lawyer. So if you don't want a lawyer, you don't have to have one to participate in this. It's a simple 3-page form. You can get it on oilspillcourtcase.com. You fill it out and you mail it to the clerk of court in Louisiana. And it will protect your rights against Transocean by filing that form. What it also does is it joins you in the master lawsuit. Now, it's not a class action, so don't think of it that way. It just joins you in the master lawsuit, and it's a separate process than the Gulf Coast Claims Facility. And so there's really no downside to filing the form. You need to go ahead and file it to make sure you preserve those rights for a lot of different reasons, primary one being the trial that's coming up in February of 2012. We are trying this case against Transocean and all of the other defendants, and the court is going to decide whether or not Transocean gets the benefit of the limitation of liability, whether they get to cap their damages at $27 million. The court is also going to allocate fault amongst all the people out there, so all of the different defendants, Halliburton, BP, Cameron, Transocean. The court's going to allocate fault for both the explosion and the failure to contain the spill. And then the other thing the court is going to decide is whether or not there was gross negligence or gross misconduct out there, which could lead to punitive damages. So if you want to get the benefit of the results of that trial and not risk losing what comes out of that trial, you need to file the form. It's very simple to do. Like I said, oilspillcourtcase.com. You don't need a lawyer to do it. There's no filing fee to do it, and you can still go forward with your claims in the Gulf Coast Claims Facility. This won't affect that. And if Mr. Feinberg decides to pay your claim and you sign a release and you're happy with what he's paying you, that's fine. If you're not, then this preserves your ability to go forward in litigation.
Anyone have any questions? That's important. You can file a claim in Gulf Coast Claims Facility and one through this action here. So it's really important that if you want to do that, if you want to participate in that, you do not have to have an attorney. It's available to you.
That's right. And like I said, oilspillcourtcase.com, you go there, the form will pop up, you can type in electronically and just hit print and then mail the form off to the clerk. It's that simple.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
By the way, we did ask Gulf Coast Claims Facility. We tried to deal with Mr. Feinberg's office in Washington, and we invited them to the meeting tonight, and frankly, they did not think it was in their best interest to be here. So they're not here. But they say you can go and see them anytime, 7 days a week. We have, in the back, we have forms for filing a claim. If you have not filed one, you need to get one in a minute so you can walk through when Mr. Johnson goes through the forms. I would encourage you to do this. This is not a sprint. If you get rejected 10 times in the next 10 months, it's still not over for you. It could very easily be that President Obama or Judge Barbier or some other judge steps in and says, we want to start this process over. If you have an application in, it'll be a lot better than a flood of applications that's going to come if the nature of this process changes. Hold on to it. Put it in a safe place. My guess is that we're going to see some major changes in the next few months. And we're going to go through, Kelly, come on up. Kelly Johnson worked with the Gulf Coast Claims Facility. He still has many contacts there. He's seen hundreds of applications. He's seen good applications. He's seen horrendous applications. He knows very well that the process that they've asked for 6 months ago is different today. So if you will listen to him, and by the way, I want to mention to you again, go home, let your neighbors see this. Please, if you have not filed, or if you know a neighbor that's not filed, or if you were one of the 151,000 that was rejected in a 3-day period and you're discouraged, file again. You read about the fraud, don't worry about the fraud. Most of you are not trying to defraud anyone. You're just trying to make it. There are people out there that did defraud them. They have to pay a consequence. But that should not discourage you from doing what you're supposed to do. Kelly Johnson, good to have you.
Thank you. Can you help me out with the PowerPoint? My name is Kelly Johnson. I'm with NWF Consulting. I am a former BP claims adjuster. I was a large loss claims adjuster with BP prior to the Gulf Coast Claims Facility coming in and taking over. At the time of the transition between BP and GCCF, I transferred over to the government claims team. I worked on as a government claims adjuster for a while, and then when I got done with that, I came home and was quite glad to be home. And then I had some friends that needed help with their BP claims, so I got back involved helping them, and here I am. My wife said that I could sleep in 6 months, but right now I've got to work on this. I've put together this presentation. I spoke myself with Ms. Camille Byros, who is Mr. Feinberg's project manager in Washington, D.C. on this process, and she did tell me they were not coming to this meeting. Thank you. They didn't see a need for it, but she also said I was able to discuss this presentation with her at length, and she actually said she appreciated what I was doing. We'll see how that works out at the end of this, but my goal here is to equip you with the information that you need to continue to file your claims, to try to go forward and get them paid. I'm going to hopefully give you some information that's going to be helpful. So if I can figure out how to work the remote. Is it just up and down? Okay, here we go. All right, as I said, I'm not with them any longer, so I have to give you my disclaimer. NWF Consulting is an independent consulting firm. We do not represent BP, GCCF, or any other government entity. Just covered that one. Guide you through the claims process. NWF is not legal representation. We do not offer legal advice, and we do not offer legal representation. We are not a substitute for an attorney. The agenda, I'm going to discuss causation. We've heard a lot about tying your claim to the oil spill. We're going to go through the new rules and discuss that. We're going to look at the financial test that they have put out on their website. I'm going to explain that to you in detail. Documentation requirements, calculation methods, claim organization, claim submission, and lastly, filing a claim with the United States Coast Guard against the fund there, and tell you how that's working out. This is just a snapshot of the GCCF website. You'll see this a couple times in my presentation, and the purpose of it is I just want to show you where we're going. We're going to look first at the final rules. I'll talk about that. February the 18th, they finally put out their final rules governing how calculation methods are going to work, the documentation requirements, appeals process, and all that stuff. And everything that I'm going to do tonight is, with the exception of the Coast Guard, basically comes from the final rules. So we're going to start by looking at the attachment A, the establishing of the evidence, basically tying your claim to the oil spill. If you look at their documentation, when you click on that link I just showed you, you're going to see this. It's kind of confusing. They've kind of been a little bit redundant in their information. The first page I've got here, losses due to the effect of the oil spill on the Gulf seafood supply chain. Most of us here, this is not our loss. It's tourism based. I'm not even going to really cover this. If you'd like information on this afterwards, we'll get together. Is there anybody in here that would fit into this category? Okay, so we'll move on. Losses due to the effects of the on the tourism sector. You really have to cross all your T's and dot all your I's. And what I mean when I say that, I've got a claim that recently, it's for a dentist. We've done everything. We've passed they call it the smell test. We've passed the financial test. Everything checks out. The claim was legitimately hurt. The business was hurt pretty bad by the oil spill. We received a denial letter because they said that we didn't prove causation. So I spoke back to someone in power there, and I was explained that even though it's a dentist, even though we passed the financial test, even though the business had been coming out of the recession and growing for 9 months prior to the oil spill, we didn't do enough to tie our claim to the actual oil spill. So I asked the question, what else do I have to do? It's a dentist. What do you want me to do? It's a dentist in Pensacola. What can I do to show you? Well, we're going to have customer listing. We're going to have letters from your clients that canceled their dentist appointment and tie them to the oil spill. I said, that's impossible. We cannot do that. And the response that I got back was, well, that's the criteria. Live with it or go somewhere else. So with this particular claim, what I've decided to do is go somewhere else. We're going to take it to the Coast Guard. And I'm going to go through that. You'll hear me say Coast Guard over and over again because the process with the Coast Guard is a whole lot more transparent. You can call and speak to they call them adjudicator instead of adjusters. You can call and speak to your adjudicator at any time. You can always find out where your claim is in the process. Also, they're telling me the claims process with the Coast Guard is 30 to 60 days versus 90 plus days with the GCCF. One other thing to note too, and this came from one of the managers inside the Coast Guard claims facility, that two things. One is, he said, we've been doing claims since 1990. The GCCF has been doing claims since August. Who do you trust? This is their words, not mine. Secondly, he said, when we're looking at a claim, we're going to be very detailed. In some cases, the Coast Guard is going to be more detailed with their claim than the GCCF will be. You may get a letter back from the Coast Guard that says you did not supply us page 2 of your Schedule K-1 with your 2008 income tax returns. Provide it. They give you the opportunity. Any other questions they have, they give you a list of those questions, and you have the ability to go through and answer all their questions. They don't expect you to know everything and be able to answer every question to the fullness, but they do want as much information as they can so they can process those claims. But getting back to the GCCF, you really have to go above and beyond to tie your loss to the oil spill. In most cases now, I'm seeing that it doesn't even matter they've already paid you. That doesn't necessarily mean they should have paid you in their eyes. So be sure that every time you send a claim in, you document why you feel that it's compensable. Losses due to interruption of business. Most of us are not going to be in this category either, because this category, according to GCCF, is primarily dealing with water closures, that sort of thing where product couldn't get through and all that. But still in all, if you do have this kind of loss, we have to document it. We have to document it very well. Going back to the main website, I'm going to skip the response to the comments, and I'll reserve the reason why. The financial test, we'll look at that. This is one that a lot of people get tripped up on. The financial test, you can read all this. Basically what they want to know is what you were doing pre-spill in that year compared to post-spill. They're allowing you to take your 2008 numbers versus your 2010 numbers, or your 2009 numbers versus your 2010 numbers, depending on which works out better for you. They actually say the highest of the two. And I appreciate the fact that they're doing that. The financial test is, up to simplify it, what I've done is I've created a little spreadsheet instead of reading all this stuff. This is a spreadsheet that I've created. You'll see at the top here where we've got 2008 and 2010. This is the pre-spill months, post-spill months, and it tells you that this particular business was growing at an average of 11.71% prior to the oil spill when you're comparing 2008 to 2010. If you're comparing 2009 to 2010, it's a 28.95%, so obviously they were coming out of the recession. But post-spill, they were actually declining at 11.22% comparing the 08 and 9.9% comparing the 2010. And I took the 2010 just to kind of give you guys a closer view of it. But here's the 2008 versus 2010, and you can see it's just simple math, month to month. January of 08 to January 2010, there was an increase of 52.2%. Does everybody understand how I'm doing that? And I hate to say you need to do this on your claims, but this is the financial test that they're asking you to put yourself through and show them that you've done that. We'll go back to the screen here. This is just like their website. Documentation requirements, attachment number D. I'm not going to be able to go through all of it because it's pretty lengthy. Most of you, if not all of you, when you filed your claim with the GCCF, you received a packet. If not, you received it after the February 18th rules came out, where they sent you all the documentation required for them to process your claim. It seems kind of tedious in some respects. In other respects, if you step back and look at it, if you were a business owner and someone is filing a claim against you for losses that you caused to them, you're going to want them to document their losses. I mean, it's just plain and simple. And in some cases, we're asking them for $1 million, $2 million. They've got to know that we're a legitimate company, that we really lost the money. And so we need to work with them in that respect and get all the documentation together. The unfortunate thing is, and I'm going to go ahead and say it with the risk of causing myself a headache. I worked for the GCCF at the transition. And I can tell you that in each one of the offices, I was in the Fort Walton Beach office and I also worked in Hammond. At the time of the transition, just before the transition took place, I worked in the office in Fort Walton Beach. We had to go through each and every paper file in our office, make sure that each document was scanned into the computer system at that time, which was BP or Worley rather. We had to make sure that every piece of documentation was scanned into the computer. Then we had to package that file in order with a checklist. We had to rubber band the files up and put them in a box. They were all going to be going to Ohio for the GCCF. Now, somewhere in the transition, the computer systems changed from what we scanned all the documentation in to the computer system that was going to be used by the GCCF. And I have been told that electronically it did not work out. The paper files or the electronic files that were in the old system did not transfer to the new system. It's very unfortunate for those that don't have the greatest record keeping, because it meant that they turned their only copy in to BP, and now their only copy that was scanned in is somewhere in a file with about 200,000 other claims. And it was also stated, I called in and it was stated by more than one of the GCCF personnel at the time, just calling in on the phone, talking to somebody, not inside information, but literally talking to someone in the office about documentation. And it was stated that somewhere in the neighborhood of 40,000 claims physically were lost. The documentation was lost in those claims. Now, I don't know if there's any accuracy to that. It came from more than one source just in talking on the phone. So keep that in mind. We go back through, even though you've already filed your claim, you have submitted all of your documentation. When you do a claim, one thing that I suggest on every claim, if you've received an emergency payment and it almost covers all of your losses and you're redoing your claim for an interim, just go ahead and send them the paperwork again. It's not going to hurt. It's redundant. It's there. It's over with. And they can never say you didn't supply they should never be able to say you didn't supply the right documentation. So also on your documentation, it's very important, and it's in their rules, that you are to put your claim number, the name of your claim, and your EIN, but I encourage you to don't put your full EIN number on the claim forms, on any of the forms. Put, if it's your social security number, put all X's up until the last 4 digits, put the last 4 digits of the tax IDer. So if it's a social security number, just put your last 4 of your social on there. Make sure that's on every page. There's a couple ways easy to do that. If you have, if you have Excel on your computer, you can create a little sheet and just put it at the top. Load your printer back up with your claim paperwork, zip it through, and just print everything on top. If not, you can use Notepad to do it, or you can, if you have PDF Pro, Adobe Pro, you can put it on there as a header. But make sure your paperwork is identified, because it does get lost. All documentation now, if you go to the claims office and hand in your paper documentation, they do not scan that in the offices. What they do is they mail that to Dublin, Ohio for someone else to scan in. So hope that sheds some light on it. You would think with all the technology it would be a little easier. Let's see if there's anything else. Oh, one other thing I want to mention on documentation. I have physically gone into one of the offices and sat and spoke with one of the Burke Blue attorneys. If any of you have heard Mr. Feinberg speak, you've heard him mention the Burke Blue attorneys, that they are in the office to assist you. You can go to them if there's an issue with your claim. They can do nothing for you. bluntly honest, they can do nothing, they have no authority, but the only thing they can do is go into the computer system and see a backside of it that other folks in the office cannot see. So I have physically gone into the offices there and met with one of the Burke Blue attorneys, and it came to light that there was a certain document missing. He said, we cannot process this claim because we're missing, for example, the 2007 income tax returns or 2008. And I said, well, we provided that documentation. And he said, well, let me look. So he looks in the system. He said, oh, it's named incorrectly in our system. It's here. So what I'll do is I'll send an email back so that they can review the claim again. That process, it's my understanding, has also changed. Now they can't even go in and say, please review this claim because the document you're requesting is here. If you receive a letter of deficiency, from this point moving forward, what you have to do is you can call in and make sure that it's in the system. Someone will be able to identify with you that it is in the system. Then you have to write a letter to answer to that letter of deficiency. You're supposed to say, you guys have the documentation, this is what it's named, and I feel that it addresses the deficiency because of this reason. It just puts more work on you, but our ultimate goal is to all get paid for what we're claiming here. So, also another thing on your claims, when you're submitting your claims, if you have the ability to be able to scan in all your documentation and do it electronically. I say this because if you scan in your 2008 tax returns and you name it 2008 tax returns, and you put your claim number as part of the name of that document, you can email that document into info-gccf claims, however it is. You can email that into the email address they provide. The only thing they do at that point is they attach it to your claim electronically. And they also send you an email back with the attachment in the email they sent back to you as a verification that they've received it. So you don't have to worry about someone else naming your documents incorrectly. You don't have to worry about somebody not sending your documents to Ohio. If you have the capability of scanning them in and emailing it, please do that.
One file per document or one file per claim?
I have not seen that there's been a limitation on their email, so whatever you can fit. It's easier for your records probably if you name it and just do one document and title that the email, the subject of that document, so you'll know what you've sent. This is just a breakdown of the forms that they're wanting. This is for individual claimants. I've kind of broken it down a little bit, but for individual claimants, they want to know what you made 2008, 2009. It doesn't matter if you're only claiming, let's say as an individual, you're only claiming your lost rents of a condo or a lost sale of something. They still want all the same information. They want your tax returns. They want your blood type. They want everything. So don't go by the list and say, you know what, I don't need to provide that because it's irrelevant to my claim. We're having to play within their rules. So if they ask for it, give it if you want to get paid. Okay? Because I'll tell you, when you go to the Coast Guard, they're going to ask for the same documentation. I think everybody has access to all this information. So, again, be sure that you provide any documentation that establishes the oil spill is the reason for your loss. And lastly, for full review final claims, be sure that you support in documentation. What this is saying is if you're trying to get, let's say you know that last year you lost $10,000 and you think for the next 2 years you're going to lose 10 each, so you're going to ask for $30,000 as the final claim. Document why you're doing that. And be careful too when you go on the website to fill your claim out online, claim form. Some of the others that have done this a lot probably have run into this. If you have to reset your password or if you have to request a new password, anything of that nature, it takes you, I can click on the interim claim form online. It brings it up, and then when I have to reset the password, I go back. It automatically defaults and brings you back to a final claim form. So if you're trying to do an interim, if you make any changes, make sure the top of the page did not change, and now you're requesting a final instead of an interim. I am sure that's just an accident. I'm sure they're not trying to trick anybody, but it is the way that it is. Now, for businesses, it's a whole lot more in-depth. What you need to do is go over their documentation. Make yourself a checklist. Read their documentation. Make yourself a checklist. And as you get the documentation ready, mark it off on your checklist. Okay, I'm ready to send this in, this. And when your checklist is completed, then what I would suggest you do is print off a blank claim form from their website. Hand fill that thing in. Just go ahead and make sure that you answer all the questions. That way, when you go into the claim form to do it online, you can go right by your sheet. You've already done everything. You've already answered everything. There's nothing left. Because when you submit the claim form online, according to the website, you only have 5 days in which to submit the follow-up documentation. If you do it via mail, when you can actually type it in there and print it out with everything typed in for those that have poor handwriting. But when you do that and you submit your claim via paper form, you have to submit all the documentation at that time. You don't want to give them a reason to deny or delay your claim. So you do it, you cover your bases, and then let them answer to why they do or do not cover their bases. There's a lot more with business claimants. Documents to establish ownership. If you are claiming for loss of income on condo rental, be sure that you put a copy of your deed or show that you own that property. Also be sure that you have, if you use a rental agency, be sure that you include a copy of the contract for the rental agency, because they're going to take your lost rents and they're going to reduce it by whatever that contract amount is. So if you're paying 20% to the rental agency, your loss of income truly is only the 80% of the loss. And then the rental agency is going to recover the other 20% via their claim. Fishing licenses, documents to show how the rental property is managed, insurance for lost income. This is kind of not very many people have the insurance for lost income. Those that do, I think this spill for the most part did not qualify, so they were unable to recover funds there from what I'm seeing. But if you do have a policy, be sure you note it. Also note, hey, it did not get paid. And if you have a denial letter from your insurance company, include that in there so they can say, yes, it did not get paid. There we go. Mitigation. I hate this one. How can you stop the oil spill? If you did things to try to mitigate your damages, and I hate it in one respect and I like it in this respect. If you are a business owner and because of the oil spill, you saw that your business was about to start declining, you might have gone out and doubled your advertising budget. I include that. It can be mitigation, but it's the reverse. It's the additional expenses that you incurred because of the oil spill. So what I do typically on those is I'll build a completely separate spreadsheet and I'll show 2008, 2009, this is the amount that we spent on advertising. 2010, this is the amount we spent on advertising, trying to mitigate our damages to keep from losing any additional monies. So if you've incurred expenses because of those things, be sure you note that in a file so you can request those funds as well. Again, for full review final payment claims, consult a psychiatrist. I'm sorry, not a psychiatrist. Just kidding. I don't request, I am an independent consultant. I'm also a former BP adjuster. Speaking to friends that are still with BP in a casual conversation, when you bring up the word final, they all just laugh, and on the inside they're saying, why in the world would anyone ever want to file a final claim? So just make sure that when you do that, it's what you want to do. And the other thing is make sure that you're not, I'm going to give you some advice, make sure you're not filing the final claim because your back is against the wall. So many people are taking the quick pay settlements because it's a stopgap measure. No, you need to recover your losses. So before you just take that and walk away, think about the other side of it and just, are your effects going to be long lasting? We don't know. So just food for thought. Think about that. Documents for real and personal property claims. I'm not going to go into the damage because most of us don't have physical damage to our personal property, so it's not a big issue. I do want to touch on this. If you have real estate, let's say, for example, you own condos and you had them for sale at the time of the spill, there's a value that's attributable to that condo on April the 19th, the day before the oil spill. We all know that because of the oil spill, all of our property values around here took a major hit. I've seen some pretty drastic numbers where properties were reduced by 50 and 60% because of their location or because of the type of business that was located on those properties. What we're trying to do on that, and we've got other people that are kind of doing the same thing. Let's say that you own a condo and it's for sale for $100,000 on April the 19th. And now you've had to sell it for $40,000, so you've lost $60,000 on that property, give or take. What we'll do is we'll have an appraisal done on that property that dates back to April the 19th. We'll find what the actual value would have been on April the 19th. Then we'll find what you had to sell the property for, and the difference between the value before the oil spill and what you actually realized on that property, that is your loss. And so, does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions on that? Go ahead. If you don't sell the property, the short answer, you're probably going to have an attorney. And I say that because this is internal. When you have a meeting with them, they say this: it has to be a realized loss. Okay, so if you have the property and it was worth $100,000 on April 19th, right now it's worth $50,000, and you don't sell the property, then you have the issue of, well, when you sell it, is it going to be worth 100, 50, 150? It's not a loss that you've actually, quote unquote, realized because you didn't have to sell the property at a loss. So that's kind of how they look at it. Again, the full review final payments. Okay, if your claim is represented, if you have an attorney or someone helping you with the claim, be sure you provide that documentation. A couple things to note on represented files, and this is kind of how they look at it. If you are represented by an attorney and you want to handle any part of your claim yourself, a lot of people do. A lot of people will go out and retain attorneys, and then they'll say, you know what, if I have to go to litigation, I've got the attorneys on standby, we'll do what we have to do, but I want to handle my claim on my own because I don't want to get lost in the shuffle or whatever your decision is. Some attorneys will tell you, hey, go ahead and handle the claims process on your own and let me take care of the litigation part of it. Some attorneys do it, some don't. If you hire an attorney and you want to handle your claim, you have to get a letter from your attorney to GCCF stating that they're able to communicate with you on the claim. So you do still have that option. Also, if you have an attorney, you can still go to people like Salt Marsh and others. You can go to the consultants, you can go to the accountants and get them to help you with the claim. There's just a whole different letter that has to be done, but it's a kind of a unique process. But anyway, it can be done. We help attorneys quite often with their claims, getting them together because they're attorneys, we're claims people.
I have one question.
Okay.
So basically, if you do attain an attorney, what is the success rate then with that?
I honestly don't know. I do know that I've been told that according to the GCCF, they have approximately 40,000 represented files. I think that's their numbers. They say internally they've received notification that they have about approximately 40,000 claims that are represented by attorneys. Just in talking to some of the folks that we deal with on a daily basis, I think not everybody's turned in their paperwork yet. So I wouldn't say it slows down the process to get an attorney. At one time it did, but if you're still going through the claims process, the only difference is now when they process your claim, the check goes to the attorney instead of just to you. So I wouldn't say, I can't say positive or negative. At the rate this thing is going, I'm starting to think everybody needs one. The calculation methods based on the final rules that they have put on their website tells you that you can compare 2008 or 2009, whichever year was better for you, compare that directly with 2010. They want to see pre-spill and post-spill so they can do the math. You can do the math that way. Also, when you're doing the calculations that way, it's kind of, we had this argument whenever I worked for GCCF. We had one of the gentlemen that would tell us, be sure you go through the variable expenses. Variable expenses would be things such as cost of goods. That's kind of a fixed variable, but it's a variable expense. Utilities, they're saying, are fixed expenses, and I guess for some companies that would be true. For most companies, it's not. Telephone, all these different things they consider variable expenses. I typically don't change those in mine. If there's something that's glaring, something that's obvious, we'll go ahead and take care of that because it's an issue. But somebody's not going to go turn your lights half off in the building because they've been affected by the oil spill. So it's not necessarily variable expenses, but if you have those, you do need to address those with your calculations. Trending. Trending is a thorn. We've got businesses that we deal with that were doing great in 2008, not so great in 2009, starting to rebound in 2010. And in situations like that, the cookie cutter that says you can go by 2008 or 2009, compare it directly with 2010, that's your loss. Those are great. If your 2010 numbers were not trending above 2009 or not trending above 2008, then you can use this method and it benefits you. Where you run into the problem is if you did okay in 2008, better in 2009. In 2010, you were beginning to do even better. Then all of a sudden the oil spill hits, you feel the effects, and you start to do this number. It's not fair to that business or that individual to go back and say, well, in 2008 you made this, or in 2009 you made this. I don't care what I made then. That's not what I was trending to do in 2010. So what I do in those cases, I'm going to show you on the next slide, but you need to take trending into account. Now, I had a conversation Friday with Ms. Camille Byros, project manager for this, and we discussed trending. And I brought this scenario to her. I said, what about the businesses that were trending upwards, even above 2008 or 2009? Are we going to then punish those businesses and say, we've got to go by the 2008 and 2009 numbers? And she said, well, my best answer for that is speak to the accountants. But she would not provide me a phone number to speak to those accountants. So that's where we are with that. My thing on it is, let's get what we can get out of the GCCF. We'll take that same analysis. Once we get a check from the GCCF for what they determined we lost, then we'll go back, we'll refile for the difference for that trending. We're going to file for it in the beginning, but when they underpay it, we're going to refile for that. We're also going to turn around and file that with the U.S. Coast Guard to try to get them to have their forensic team look at it and understand what we're doing. So don't give up just because they pay half of what you requested. That's not the end of the road. Special circumstances, let's say you own a small air conditioning company, you're a sole proprietor, and in 2008 you were doing okay. At the end of 2009, or end of 2008, you had a heart attack, unexpected. So 2008 kind of, went down at the end of the year. 2009, you still weren't doing that great because you weren't able to work for the first half of the year. 2009, you started coming back up, you hired you a new guy, and your business started coming back. Those are special circumstances that have to be taken into account when you're working your claim. Don't think just because, well, my family and I decided to take a European vacation and we're gone for 6 months, the business suffered, and now because I did that, it's going to affect me in the rest of the claim. No, we just need to show what happened, explain it, document it, and then move on from there and ask for the appropriate amount that you should have made in 2010. Any questions about any of that? Okay.
Actually taking that into consideration, or are they just doing straight numbers?
I know in the beginning we were taking that into consideration, and they do have accountants that are there supposedly for that purpose. One of the accountants came over to our office a couple of weeks ago and sat with us, and he supposedly is one of the head accountants with the GCCF and all this stuff, and he said all that stuff is taken into account. So I didn't tell Ms. Camille that I had met with him because he is a friend of mine, and I didn't want to muddy the waters, but she didn't provide me anybody to speak to. But I do have connections in there that they are taking those things into account. They may not do it initially when they make the payment, but eventually they will have to do those. And also the Coast Guard takes those into account. The Coast Guard it's more personable. I know it seems funny, you're dealing with the government, but it is more personal. You can call and speak to them, explain it, then their forensic accountants seem to have a pretty clear head on their shoulders as to what they're doing with it. So it's kind of nice. Go ahead.
So just one more question, just so I can understand it, and I'll probably talk to somebody afterwards. But, okay, so if 06, 07, 08, all was a 15 to 20% increase, and then you had a jump from 08 to 09, it was kind of about the same. Now, that being a trend set, saying that if you averaged it out and you were at a 15% increase, so for the next 2 years, would 2010 or 2011, would you add those increases in as 10%?
We'll look at that on the next screen. I actually addressed that on the next screen.
Okay.
Okay. New businesses, those are always a challenge. Salt Marsh would be a good opportunity, good option for you to go to and let them help you with the new businesses. If you have a business plan, they really want to see it. If you don't have one, they really want to see it. You have to show we were going into business, we were starting up, this is what we were doing. If you can get some comparables, some industry averages, they take those things. So new businesses are a challenge, but don't think just because you started 2 days before the oil spill and then you were affected, don't think that you're not an eligible claimant, because you still are. Businesses closed due to oil spill. We're dealing with quite a few of these, and it kind of reverts back to I had my property for sale prior to the oil spill. I had to sell it at a reduced amount. If the business has closed because of the oil spill, what we're attempting to do is have a professional business appraiser come in and give your business a fair market value based on the day prior to the oil spill. And then we're going to put all the documentation together and try to get GCCF to purchase your business as if they were purchasing it the day before the oil spill. That make sense? Any questions on that? Hope not, because I don't have a lot of answers on it. Okay. Okay, on the trending issue, this is, and I do this worksheet pretty much on all of my claims. It might be kind of hard to follow, but I'm going to break it down and kind of show you. And for my competitors, please don't look at this, okay? Gross sales. I do everything off of gross sales initially, and I'm going to show you why. I take the 2008 numbers, and I actually go all the way back to January of 2008. But this part of the spreadsheet only shows May through December. What I do is I put your 2008 numbers in, 2009, this number right here, the projected with trending for 2010 is kind of it's a unique calculation. Based on the 24 months that I put in, it automatically populates my trending calculator. So what I do is I say April of 2008 to April of 2009, this business was growing, or actually this business was reducing at, I can't really see it, 0.12% or whatever it was. So each month, this goes into the calculator. At the end, depending on the business, the cycle of the business, the way things worked out, let's say, for example, this business felt the effects of the oil spill until 6 months, the effects of the economy until 6 months prior to the oil spill. What I would then do, I would take the last 6 months, which would be up to October. Where are we at? October. I would take these 6 months and I would determine what that average is. I would put the average here to show, and I would explain down here, we're looking at a 6 month trending. So we would take that average for 6 months, we would multiply it times the 2009 numbers to project what we were on track to do for 2010. Does that make sense? Okay,
Yeah,
good.
but what if you're a seasonal business and you're?
It's still going to be
It's still gonna
reflective.
be the same.
It's still going to be reflective. Because if you're seasonal, your January to January is not going to change. It would be your January to July that would change. So this is still effective in that scenario. Then we take the 2010 actual, and what we do is we just subtract it. We say, okay, they were up this month and down this month. And from the time of the oil spill through December, we come up with what the total loss was based on those projections. At the same token, if you had no trending, if you were not coming out of the recession yet, you were flat, we would use a zero trend. If you were reducing by whatever percentage, I put 0. And the reason I put 0, I'm not going to make your business continue to decline. You don't know. All the other businesses seem to have been coming out of the recession. So we're not going to penalize you for my calculations. We're not going to penalize you and say, okay, well, you would have continued to go down. But the other reason I don't do that is when BP was in control of this process, we never trended anyone negatively. We always flattened out the trend when BP was in the driver's seat. And so I look at it as BP should still be in the driver's seat, and I'm going to zero out that trending. So that's how we get that. Down here, you'll notice I've got two numbers. I've got total loss of gross sales, which is $159,000. This number matches this number. And this section is taken directly off of the 2008-2009 income tax returns. I look at the gross sales, I put that number in here. I look at your gross profit, put that number in there, and I find out what your average profit margin is. Now, we do it for 2 years, and then we average those 2 years to say this is where you should have been trending for 2010, an average of 08 and 09 for your profit margin. Seems fair to me. So that's the way we do it. We take that number, we multiply it times your total gross loss profit, and then we'll come up with your total gross profit. That's typically what I ask for. If there are any other issues, such as the increased cost of advertising or decreased cost because, you know what, you decided to go ahead and close your business, so now you don't have your employees any longer or what have you, we could put that number in here and say we're decreasing it because of this. And also, be sure, whatever calculation method you use for your claim, be sure you explain it. If it doesn't make sense when you step back and look at it to you, it's not going to make sense to them whenever they get it. So it's always a good thing when you get frustrated when you claim, when you get deep into it, set it down, walk away, come back and say, okay, now, does this make sense to me? Because I promise you, if it doesn't to you, it won't to them. But on every one of our sheets, we put a little explanation down here telling them how we came up with our trending and the whole 9 yards. So, claim organization. This is a biggie. It kind of goes back to what I was talking about with the when you submit your documentation electronically, be sure you name it. Whenever you submit a claim and you're doing it in paper form, go down to Office Depot, whatever, and buy you some separators and label each one of those sections, so whoever's gonna ultimately scan that claim in can have the wherewithal to name those documents what you need them to be named, so whoever's evaluating your claim can identify those documents. Be sure you put a hardship letter. In my hardship letter, typically I will include the claim calculation. I like to do one letter instead of 4 different letters. So on your hardship letter, explain, I'm claiming this for my business does this. Give them a very clear picture. Tell them everything you want them to know in the hardship letter. And then also be sure you explain your method of calculation, how you got there. It's not a bad idea in your letter, in your hardship letter, to go ahead and tell them, okay, I'm submitting to you all these documents, and list those documents out. So again, be sure on every page you put your name, your claim number, your tax ID number, and make sure it's legible on every page. Keep copies of everything that you submit. That's a biggie. The United States Coast Guard. I think the claim form for GCCF is 13 pages, and the claim form for the U.S. Coast Guard is pretty detailed. You had to fill out both of these pages completely. So this is the claim form for the Coast Guard, but what you will find, even though their claim form is kind of small, they're very detailed. You will get a letter back from them asking you to answer a good list of questions. You'll get everything they'll need. They will let you know what they need. They will not deny your claim because you did not submit something. They're going to give you the opportunity to submit that. They'll give you a phone number of the person to talk to. And this is just a copy of their website. Everything they do is based on OPA 90, which is the litigation that kind of dictates the claims process. Claim requirements. This is on their website as well. It basically, most of this is going to mirror what the GCCF requires. And then how to submit your claim, you can do it. They say that you have to mail it in. You can do theirs via disc. You can put all your forms on a disc electronically and mail the disc in, so they have that. But if you call ahead of time, you can also fax in the claim sheet. They will give you an email address for an individual person that you can email your claim forms into, so that you're dealing with someone directly, you're not worried about your claims getting lost. And then most importantly, I did not bring business cards. I didn't come to sell you guys anything, but I will provide you my contact information. It's free to talk to me. Again, I am an independent consultant. I do work for hire. So if you guys need my assistance, most of you can call and ask some questions. I'm not going to charge you for that. But if you want us to handle your claim for you front to back, then obviously there's a charge for that. But this is my contact information. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, can I ask one Coast Guard question? Weinberg, a number of times has said, if you don't like the way I'm handling it, go to the Coast Guard. But my impression is the Coast Guard has this much money and Feinberg has this much money.
Okay, I did ask that question to the Coast Guard. And there was recently a lawsuit filed about that very issue. And what the Coast Guard did, they sued because they were beginning to pay claims that the GCCF were not paying. And what happened was, and it's in the law actually, the Coast Guard then goes back to the responsible party and says, you should have paid this claim, send us the money back. So when the Coast Guard, which is GCCF, correct.
Well, no, Feinberg is separate from BP.
Well, not according to Judge Barbier now. So it comes out of that fund. It comes out of the $20 billion pledged fund. So even though the Coast Guard pays it, they will send a check and they will pay the money. Then they send a bill back over to the GCCF and say, hey, we paid this claim that you should have paid, reimburse us this money. Also, on that note, Mr. Feinberg has publicly stated that every claim that has gone from the GCCF to the Coast Guard has upheld his decision on those claims in 100% of those cases. According to the Coast Guard, that is an absolute lie, and that's their word, not mine. They said that we take every claim on its merits, that we pay claims that should be paid, and we don't categorically deny claims. So that's their take on it.
We had a,
Well, that, not VU. I don't know if you're talking about VU, but VU is completely separate.
No, I'm talking about the GCDF and the Coast Guard.
Okay.
well, frankly, we had a conference with the Coast Guard today, and they've got ways to go. And we're looking at if they're a legitimate option after GCCF. I don't think they're quite ready for the volume of what we could be sending them. they will, if you send them a claim, they will notify BP and GCCF that you've notified them. And many times, because you've notified them, they will be more proactive on your claim. But we're going to spend quite a bit of time with the Coast Guard to see if they can do a better job in helping us get. I can understand that. I'm going to ask Misty Cash with the CFO's office to come up just very quickly to give you her brief experience. Then what we're going to do, we're going to break out to some open sessions here. Come on up, Misty. Misty, just give us a little experience that what we can do if they have a breakdown in the process.
How many of you are on information overload? Nobody? Really? Well, then I can go home. Sorry, I'm short. Just so I can kind of get a feel, how many of you in this room have been denied your claim? Okay. Well, just to kind of give you a very quick overview, my name is Misty Cash. I'm with CFO Atwater's office. We're with the Department of Financial Services. Our department has been over in this area since May, trying very hard to do a lot of listening, hearing what was being said, listening to you and what your concerns and your needs have been. Our department primarily deals with insurance issues, things like that. As a matter of fact, Cheryl Logan is with me tonight. If you're looking for ways to save money and you want us to help you take another look at your insurance policy to see if you have too much coverage, not enough coverage, I mean, those are the types of things that our department does, because CFO Atwater believes that your money should stay in your pocket. And so for the past 12 months, we've been working with claimants, and some of them are here in this room tonight, doing the best that we could to help you get information about your claim, what your claim is lacking, what your claim status is, if you need additional documentation, that sort of thing. And I think all of you know and understand that over the past several months that has changed several times. The goalpost in the football game have moved back and forth on the field. This is what we know and what we're being told by GCCF, that the majority of all claims are severely lacking sufficient documentation. One of the most important aspects that they have told us is the cover letter for the claims. And the way I like to give a good example is this. Some of you remember when we were in high school and we had to do those crummy research papers where you had to state your hypothesis, then you had to talk about the research that you did, and then at the end you had to summarize whether or not your hypothesis was correct and whether your research proved that was correct. Well, your cover letter is very much the same way. Just as Kelly was talking about the accountants and looking at all that information, that cover letter is the very first thing that they read. So it needs to be very coherent. It needs to be something that you could give your next door neighbor, and if they didn't know anything about your business, they could read that cover letter and get a very good understanding of what your business does, what your problems are, and what your needs are. And we will be more than happy to assist you with that in any way. If you would like some feedback, we're working on a sample letter to provide to you so you can kind of get an outline and see things. But that, according to GCCF, has been one of the problems, is that when those accountants pick that up, people are very emotional right now, with every right. And the cover letters tend to be more about, I called GCCF and they didn't give me the information, and I sent you this, and it's not about what your claim needs are. So that's something very important to note for your cover letter. I don't know if there's any realtors in the room. Realtors. As you know, you're now eligible for the process. There are some questions that we still have about how far back they're going to pay your claims, whether they'll go back to May. All that we can address with you one-on-one. And as Kelly mentioned before, the claims offices are primarily for intake. They don't have any decision-making. I'm not going to go through kind of the process of where things go from here to there. I'll be happy to discuss that with you. Is there anybody in here who owns a business, you filed a business claim, but also filed a claim for your personal income loss? Okay. Do you understand GCCF is not going to pay you both claims? Do you understand why? They consider that if your income comes from your business, that if they compensate your business, you shall therefore be compensated with your income. So just know that if you plan on filing 2 claims, or if you have, understand that that's the process, and we'll be happy to try to delve into that anymore with you. Documentation. Kelly did a really great job of going through that, and I know that some of you have heard things so many times, and Representative Broxton and I have talked several times about documentation. Unfortunately, for all of us, logic says that I made $100,000 in 2009, and after April 20th, my income or business revenues hit the ground. So if I show you my 2009 financials, and then I show you my 2010 financials, and there's a $50,000 difference, therefore I have a $50,000 loss. BP owes me that money. That's not how it works, unfortunately. It is up to you to treat your claim like a case you're taking before a jury in a courtroom. You're going to GCCF and you're saying, I have a $50,000 loss. They are requiring that you document that $50,000 loss was caused by the oil spill. How did that happen? That's the primary reason why people's claims are being denied. If you received a cover letter, you'll remember that one line in the cover letter, probably the second or third paragraph, that says, claimant did not document their financial loss as a result of the oil spill. That's the catcher, that whole letter. All that other stuff is just words, but that's the kicker. What you have to do is you have to prove that your $50,000 loss is BP's fault. And that requires time. It requires a lot of paperwork, and that might be why they're hoping you give up, is that you just get frustrated. But we're here to say, keep going. You can do it. It's been done, and we'll help you find ways to do that. We'll brainstorm, come up with ideas. If you do decide to hire a lawyer, make sure that it's someone that you trust, that it's someone that will communicate with you when they receive communication from GCCF. Unfortunately, a lot of the claimants that we're working with that have hired lawyers, the lawyers don't consult with them. So they therefore think they haven't heard anything, and they call us, and at that point we can't help them because, as Kelly talked about, the legal representation. So just make sure that it's someone that you trust that will keep you in the loop and let you know what's going on. Is there anything that I've missed? I just wanted to let everybody know that in the back, CFO Atwater wants to hear from you. I mean, I'll go back and I'll tell him how things went, but he likes to hear from you. And we have either on our website or in the back, there's a short survey that allows CFO Atwater to hear in your own words kind of what your struggles are, what your needs are, if there's things we can do to assist you or the community. We also have an oil spill portion of our website that will be posting new resources and any future dates or meetings. Feel free to take one of the business cards in the back, call, email anytime. If you need help, we'll do everything that we can to help you. We'll do everything we can to answer your questions. Even if it's something not about the oil spill, maybe we can help point you in the right direction. But we're here to help in any way we can. Thank you.
The governor's going to be here this weekend. He certainly knows what's going on. The governor has been phenomenal in working with the 7 county coalitions. He hopes to have an announcement this coming week concerning the advertising money. And I think we have a friend. We have to keep reminding him where we live. but I believe they're committed to helping us get through this process. And I'm glad Misty did not tell you really what she thinks about the GCCF, because it would not have been very polite. Ken Detzler with the Pam Bondi's office, did you want to say anything about, he's been working in this process for 6 months? Since May, and he has some horror stories. You may want to get with him if you think something has happened that is on the verge of being illegal or not fair, or where they treated someone totally different than they treated you. Mr. Feinberg has a direct promise to Pam Bondi that he's going to make this thing work, and she's going to hold him to it, and so is the governor, and so is Jeff Atwater. Shelton, any word you have? Just
Well, just appreciate the opportunity to be here and help out. We've got a group of a dozen people at Salt Marsh that have been involved in the process. We've been involved in it since the beginning. As Kelly said, feel free to come see us with any questions or any more complicated claims. If that's a one-off situation, our job is to sit there and look at each claim as they do with a critical eye and figure out what else can be considered inside this claim to help push it through the GCCF and either get it paid or push it on down the pipeline, to get it to, if there needs to be an attorney involved. In that case, we work with attorneys, we work with the individuals. So wherever we can do to help, I'll be around here tonight.
very good. They paid out less than 20% of the $20 billion. We have a long ways to go. We've got until 2013 to deal with Mr. Feinberg, and then maybe they'll loosen up the process and give us somebody else. But do not give up. Please, do not give up. This is important to you, your family, and to the health of this community. So you do your job in filing a claim, get your neighbors, your other businesses to file a claim. This is our time to be heard and get this process moving again. Thank you, and God bless you.